war. He traveled to Israel, as the Wall Street Journal reported, to plot with the foreign officials from that government on how to best convince Trump to fight that war, which we're now doing once again. And
Because that's the cost of behaving like this and allowing our government to behave like this. How can it not poison us? How does it not implicate us? Well, obviously it does. These crimes, what happens to them as people? In some ways, you'd rather be killed than to kill. I know a lot of people who've killed, and they never get over it. It was not our strength. It was our weakness, and the people pushing it knew that, right? There was a concerted effort to destroy the country. And the empire, the greater the fall, the longer the interim between, fall and rebuilding. I mean, it's just, these are the lessons of history.
Look, I don't care what side you're on politically. What Tucker says in this clip about what endless war does to a country's soul is something everyone needs to hear right now, because we're watching it happen in real time. He's talking about Lindsey Graham, who just passed away, and how the war machine he represented is still running full speed even without him. Tucker breaks down exactly why these wars never end, who actually benefits, and what it's costing us as a people. And honestly, the way he connects America's permanent war addiction to the collapse of empires throughout history, it's one of the most clear-eyed takes I've heard on this in a long time. So let's get into it.
The government continues to do everything that he ever wanted in Ukraine. As you said, Trump is now sending that foreign government Patriot missiles, and the CIA is helping to bomb Russian civilian infrastructure, as you just talked about. Ukrainians are still being dragged off the streets to fight that war, to the last Ukrainian, in Graham's own words, when he was alive. And in Iran, as we've been talking about, Graham lobbied for that war. He traveled to Israel, as the Wall Street Journal reported, to plot with the foreign officials from that government on how to best convince Trump to fight that war, which we're now doing once again. And so I guess it's just evidence of, how entrenched these establishment forces that Lindsey Graham represented when he was alive are in Washington, and I guess will continue to be. My question is, how do you politically defeat those forces that are just so permanent and seem to outlast any one politician?
It's just so heartbreaking. I just say it's just so heartbreaking. It wasn't always this way. The United States has waged a lot of pointless wars at the behest of lunatics and short-sighted jingoists and the weapons manufacturers. Like, we've done a lot of this before. Vietnam was this for whatever it was, 11 years. However, this has become such a habit, like an addiction, that it's almost as if the government in its current form can't function without a war du jour. And the cost to America and to our culture and to our spirit, to our soul, the American soul, which does exist, contrary to popular opinion, there's an American soul, there's an Americanness about most Americans. It's been so degraded. Like, this is a nice country. These are nice people. Like, they love dogs. They give directions to strangers. They have compassion for the needy, and you want those things. You want to live in a decent, if you've ever been in a hard country where nobody cares about anybody else, and I have been, you don't want that. You don't want to live in that place at all. And we're becoming that place because that's the cost of behaving like this and allowing our government to behave like this. How can it not poison us? How does it not implicate us? Well, obviously it does. And in a real way, not just like a international criminal court way or, some man-made way, but in like an organic way. Like, when you start thinking it's okay to murder people who did nothing wrong, like, what happens to you? What happens to the soldiers we send to go commit these crimes? What happens to them as people? In some ways, you'd rather be killed than to kill. I know a lot of people who've killed, and they never get over it. It's a hugely damaging experience for them. So I just am really, really sad about all of this. And I think it only ends, of course, it only ends when you hit the brick wall, of course. Whatever. I can think of a lot of analogies here, but people don't change. I don't change. I didn't give up drinking until I really made a mess of things. And that's the point you give up drinking. What do they call it? The bottoming out or something, or the hitting rock bottom. This is like a very recognizable human phenomenon, but like, you generally, men especially, keep doing things until they can't do them anymore. And the energy.
Dude, like, this is what actual anti-war politics sounds like. Not the performative stuff you see from politicians who vote for every defense bill. Tucker's talking about what war does to us. not just strategically, not just economically, what it does to our humanity, to the people who come back from these places. And he's absolutely right. You cannot send a generation of young people to go kill strangers who never threatened us and expect them to come home the same. You can't. And then we act surprised when suicide rates among veterans are through the roof, when they can't reintegrate, when they're dealing with moral injury that no amount of VA healthcare is going to fix. Because you can't fix what happens when you realize you killed people for Raytheon's quarterly earnings. And Tucker nails the thing that most people won't say out loud, that this isn't about democracy or freedom or national security. It's about the addiction. The system literally can't function without war anymore. The defense contractors, the think tanks, the foreign policy blob, the entire apparatus only works if we're always at war somewhere. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Ukraine, Iran next. It never stops because it's not designed to stop. And here's what's crazy. Lindsey Graham is dead, right? But the policies he spent his entire career pushing are still happening. Trump sent Patriot missiles to Ukraine. The CIA is still running operations. We're still moving toward war with Iran. Because it doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter who's in Congress. The permanent war machine outlasts all of them. You know what Tucker's describing? Bipartisan consensus. The one thing Democrats and Republicans actually agree on. Endless military spending. Endless intervention. Because both parties are funded by the same defense contractors. Both parties have the same revolving door between government and Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. It's the same people. They just wear different colored ties. And when Tucker talks about what this does to the American soul, man, I feel that. Because he's right. This used to be a different country. I'm not saying it was perfect, but there was a time when Americans weren't this cynical, this exhausted, this divided. And a huge part of that is because we've been in a state of permanent war for over 20 years now. You can't do that without it poisoning everything. Your culture, your politics, your sense of who you are. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about that, because I genuinely believe most people, left, right, whatever, are sick of this. But the system keeps grinding forward anyway.
Energy crisis, the economic crisis, the loss of the dollar as the global reserve currency. Things like that, which are coming, sadly, that'll be the end of it when you can't afford it, when you can't make your Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security payments, when you can't actually pay Raytheon anymore, or whatever. When there's a crisis and a reset, is the moment where we'll get something different, and I hope better. It just makes me, and we're not there yet, but we're moving there. Obviously, there's like no honest person who doesn't think we're moving there. And I'll stop whining at some point when you just accept it. It's just a fact. But I think I'm too old to accept things quickly because I just remember so vividly what the country was like not that long ago, before 9/11. Like, it was like a silly, frivolous country in some ways. Everyone always said that, oh, you're so shallow. Yeah, fair. But also really happy, pretty happy country, really.
Cohesive. Yeah.
Yeah. And yes. Well, that, underlying all of this is that fact, unfortunately. I wish that weren't true, but it is. Yeah, cohesive. It was a cohesive country, demographically cohesive. Diversity was not our strength. It was our weakness, and the people pushing it knew that, right? There was a concerted effort to destroy the country. And people went along with it because they were rich and fat and happy, and they didn't think it was worth resisting, so they didn't. But anyway, at some point, corrupt systems stop working, and the Ottoman Empire just falls because, the Sultan has too many women in his harem, and it's like too big a percentage of GDP, and like it just collapses. Like it happens. It's the cycle of history. And then, you wait a while, and there's an Erdogan, and you start rebuilding it or whatever. It's just like, this is a very recognizable process. The last thing I will say, though, is the bigger the empire, the harder the fall, and the longer Greece has never rebuilt. Greece is still degraded. Unfortunately, it's been a while. Rome is totally degraded as a city, totally degraded. It's I won't even go there anymore because it's just too sad. It's the center of Western civilization, and like you get mugged downtown or held up with a hypodermic needle, and it's graffiti, and it's like it's truly degraded. And so it's not the Persian Empire has never been rebuilt. There are lots of empires whose precise locations we can't locate. We know the empire existed because there's references to it in Josephus or even older historical accounts, but we don't really know where they were because they've literally just disappeared. So that happens. And again, the bigger the empire, the greater the fall, the longer the interim between, fall and rebuilding. I mean, it's just, these are the lessons of history, which I guess will be disappeared by AI. Most people won't even know any of this pretty soon because Wikipedia will be our only history source, but it's true. Sad.
So here's the thing. Tucker Carlson just laid out the entire trajectory of American empire in 6 minutes. And whether you agree with him on everything or not, you have to respect that he's one of the only people with a massive platform who will actually say this stuff out loud. He's talking about the fall of empires, Rome, Greece, Persia, the Ottoman Empire. And he's saying, correctly, that we are on that same path. Because every empire that gets addicted to war, that overextends itself, that prioritizes military spending over taking care of its own people, eventually collapses. Every single one. It's not a hypothetical. It's history. And the bigger the empire, the harder the fall. That's what he said. And that's what should terrify everyone. Because if America goes down, it's not going to be a quick recovery. It's going to be generational, maybe longer. But here's what I took away from this. Tucker's not just critiquing the war machine. He's mourning what we've lost as a country. The cohesion, the sense of shared identity, the idea that we're all in this together. And he's right that we don't have that anymore. We're more divided than we've been since the Civil War. And a huge part of that is because the people at the top benefit from us being divided. They benefit from us fighting each other instead of looking up at who's actually robbing us. The defense contractors don't care if you're red or blue. They fund both sides. The military-industrial complex doesn't care about your culture war issues. They just need you distracted enough that you don't ask why we're spending $800 billion a year on the Pentagon while people can't afford insulin. And Tucker ended on this note about how corrupt systems eventually just stop working. And that's true. But the question is, what comes after? Do we rebuild something better? Or do we just keep circling the drain until there's nothing left? I think that's the fight we're in right now. Whether we can actually wake up enough people to the fact that the system is rigged, that the wars are a scam, that both parties are captured, that the only way out is to build something new. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think we're past the point of no return? Or is there still a way to turn this ship around? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this resonated with you, share it. Because this is the conversation we need to be having. That's what we do here at Blueprint. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.